me start, please. Hello again. We're coming back to our normal program. I'm sorry for a slight delay, but I had to, survive an interview and discussions with our photographer. These are important people. They're going to take the word out, and maybe will exist in the common memory of the people around us. As you know, I'm recording every session, and I will transform them like I did in previous years, and then put them on my YouTube channel per sessions. If something is lost and you still want to show them to your students who weren't able to come here because they were going to very important classes, right? That's why they are not here, right?
Do we have an option to not be recorded?
Sorry?
Do we have an option to not be recorded?
If you really want to not be recorded, I can not record you, yes. Definitely. If you tell me, hey, I forbid you to record me, because...
I guess I don't have that authority.
No, I mean, you tell me. If you don't want to be recorded, I won't record you. But I think it's important that if you come here and there's only 2 or 3 students in the audience, not by our fault, not by your fault, not by my fault, because we publicized, students understand that they have other classes to do rather than being here. The only other help that I can give them is to show them the recorded video. And hopefully they will watch it, and hopefully they will remain with something out of it. So, my text for 2 o'clock was, excuse me, thank you for attending the next event that is part of International Studies Day. This is our panel discussion called The Importance of Teaching and Learning Foreign Languages. I know what that is. From Romania, I studied English from the 2nd grade and French from the 5th grade until the 12th grade. Then I studied at the university, 90 to 95. I became a teacher of English, and then I specialized in public relations. But for me, English was a foreign language, and it helped me understand better the world. If people in the United States would study at least Spanish and maybe French because of the obvious neighbors, and then dare to study something else, that would be wonderful, because it enriches the mind, because it helps them understand the rest of the world in a better light. So, the panel moderator is Dr. Olga Beshanova, professor and chair in the Department of Foreign Languages and Literature. So, Olga, take it away. Come here and let's have the panelists here. You will stay here and give them the word, and maybe give the possibility of people to introduce themselves, and then ask if there's questions from the audience. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. How are you?
Hello.
Thank you so much. My name is Olga Bezhanova. I'm chair of the Department of Foreign Languages and Literature. And I'm originally from Ukraine. And I grew up in a polyglot family. My father in the USSR was confident that one day the USSR was finally going to fall and disappear, and then we would have a chance to travel and meet different people. And so he just forced us to learn languages, English and French, in my case. And how do you learn a foreign language in the USSR? We didn't have any access to native speakers or television programming or even reading in English. So my father decided that the best way to teach children to speak a language was through linguistic immersion. And so he only spoke in English to me and to my sister when we were growing up, which in the USSR was a little bit of a dangerous proposition, because he was constantly getting denounced to the KGB for speaking to children in what people called a Jewish language. Because my father was Jewish, he looked very Jewish, so people thought it was some sort of a Zionist propaganda, and he regularly had to go to the KGB and explain what it is that he was doing. And from that time, I realized that being able to learn another language and catch a glimpse of another culture is, and do that freely, and do that through communicating with people from that culture, that it is an enormous privilege and an enormous joy. And at our department, we make efforts to put our students in touch with speakers and learners who are either from other countries or currently in other countries. For example, we recently started conducting our Spanish Conversation Hour with students who are in El Salvador, and they can speak to our students and help our students practice their Spanish in that way. Our students really benefit from that because they say that I really don't feel shy or self-conscious about speaking because the fellow students from El Salvador are so kind and patient and they really want to connect. And I think that's such a great experience for the students because they can kind of, for that 1 hour a week that they're speaking with the students in that country, they can catch a glimpse of their daily lives. They can ask them questions. They can complain about their professors and hear their complaints. It's just really great. Another thing we're doing in a couple of weeks, I'm teaching right now a course in the Spanish drama. And so I connected with a colleague in Ukraine who is teaching the same works of Spanish literature to his students in Ukraine right now. And so we're going to hold a joint class session through, obviously remotely, right? Where my students and the Ukrainian students are going to talk about this 18th century Spanish play in Spanish because that's the only language that they have in common. And see that in Ukraine, even in the times of war, there are students who want to read literature, who want to learn languages, and every time when I do something like that, it is such an inspiring event, such an inspiring activity for my students. So foreign languages are a bridge, of course, to a whole different set of realities, a whole different world of, a different way of being. And we are collaborating with the International Studies Program. The International Studies Program requires 4 semesters of a foreign language, which brings you to a very good, in 4 semesters you can reach very intermediate or even intermediate high level of fluency, which is very good and very useful. So today I'm joined by 3 of the colleagues from my department, and they're going to talk to us about their own experiences of teaching languages and why they think that languages are important. And I wanted to start with the Professor Tom Lavallee, who is our Professor of Chinese. Ian, please welcome him.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've prepared about a 7-minute thing to read, if you don't mind. So good afternoon, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I want to begin with a simple but often overlooked fact. Mandarin Chinese is widely considered one of the most difficult languages for English speakers to learn. According to Foreign Service Institute, it takes approximately 2,200 class hours to reach professional proficiency in Mandarin. By comparison, languages like Spanish or French typically require about 600 to 750 hours. So it's a considerable steep uphill climb. I would imagine that Russian and Ukrainian are about 1,000 or 1,200 hours, also very difficult. The difference is not marginal, it is structural. Learning Mandarin is not simply adding new vocabulary, it's learning to hear differently, to read differently, and in some cases to think differently. Chinese language learning asks something distinctive of students. It asks them to slow down, to listen closely, to attend to tone, context, and relationship. It asks them to sit with difficulty, to tolerate ambiguity, and to find meaning where at first there seems to be none. And occasionally it asks them to say something simple as, I want to ask you something, and then accidentally they blurt out with, I want to kiss you. This tends to focus everyone's attention very quickly. But I want to hold together 2 ideas in this short talk. On one side, Mandarin, or Putonghua, is a standardizing language. It's spread through education, media, and governance, and it has supported national cohesion and mobility. I At the same time, it has contributed to the erosion of regional topolects such as Wu or Shanghainese, Cantonese, or Minnan-Hua. These are often called dialects, but many are mutually unintelligible. What is being lost is not only variation in speech, but entire linguistic worlds. This is a familiar global pattern. A prestige language consolidates power while compressing linguistic diversity. And yet, for many English speakers, English-speaking students, Mandarin functions in a very different way. It is not experienced first as a force of standardization, but I would say it's a threshold. It introduces tone, which differentiates meaning. It introduces a writing system where progress depends on steadily acquiring and retaining hundreds and thousands of characters that cannot be sounded out in the way that alphabetic words can. It introduces variation that shakes and rattles a single, unified language. In this sense, Mandarin expands perception. So we were left with a tension. Mandarin can be both a vector of erasure and a pedagogical bridge. To think through this, it helps to consider how language itself has been understood in the traditions that emerge from the same cultural sphere. In the Confucian Analects, we find a saying that's known to this day, that people memorize, Yen Xingbang, Yen Sangbang. One phrase can make a state flourish, and one phrase can bring a state to ruin. I might even say a true social posting. In this context, the issue is not simply speech, but whether speech can be answered. So if we return to the situation that this dialogue took place, Confucius' teachings is explaining that a ruler who hears only agreement risks collapse of the state. A ruler who accepts contradiction sustains the state. Language in this view has to remain open and responsive. In a Taoist text, the Zhuangzi, we find speech is not just blowing breath. Speech has something to say, but what it says is not yet determined. Here, language fails not only when it is suppressed, but when it becomes too certain and fixed. In Buddhist teachings, also much to say about language. A couple anecdotes from the Diamond Sutra. A dialogue going on in which Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata teach any Dharma? Subhuti said, no indeed, Bhagavan. The Tathagata does not teach any Dharma. The Tathagata has nothing to teach. What is called the teaching of Dharma is just a name. To explain a little bit. Tathagata is the title the Buddha uses for himself. The idea here is not that nothing is said, but that even the Buddha's words are not meant to be held as fixed or final. Language points, but it does not contain. To use another Buddhist metaphor, language is like a finger pointing at the moon. At this point, it might also be helpful, and this is from my background of reading, a remark by William S. Burroughs, famous beat writer, who described language as something that could be radioactive, as an old joke. It lingers, it repeats, and it shapes thought long after its origin. Taken together, these perspectives suggest that language must circulate. Language must not be fixed too quickly. Language must not be mistaken for ultimate truth. This brings us to another tension shaping education today. We are living in a moment when corporations and governments increasingly favor systems that prioritize efficiency, scale, and automation. Artificial intelligence can process language quickly, translate instantly, and generate responses with remarkable fluency. But simulation is not the same as engagement. Language learning, especially in a classroom, is a human encounter. It involves hesitation, misunderstanding, correction, and recognition. It involves the presence of another person who can respond in ways that are not fully predictable. Students are not just learning how to produce correct sentences, they're learning how to listen, how to interpret, and how to stay present when meaning is unclear. These are not inefficiencies. they are the substance of learning. If we begin to treat language as something that can be fully optimized and delivered, we risk losing something essential. We risk losing the relational dimensions of language. And that brings us back to Mandarin. If it is taught as the Chinese language, it risks reinforcing hierarchy and flattening difference. If it is taught as a Chinese language, one among many, it opens outward. And just as importantly, if it is learned as a lived practice through interaction and attention to others, it becomes something more than a system. It becomes a site of human engagement. So the question is not simply whether we teach Mandarin, it is whether we preserve the conditions under which language remains human. Conditions where speech can be answered, where meaning is not fixed too quickly, where another person is present, not as data, but as someone to listen to. If we can hold on to these conditions, then Mandarin becomes more than a language to be learned. It becomes a way of practicing attention, humility, and engagement in a world that increasingly moves in the opposite direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. It was a beautiful, beautiful talk. And please send it to me by email. Sure. So seriously, it's promotional material. It's really good. I'm currently learning a new language, new to me, because I was raised to think, my father always told me, you should always be in a state of learning a new language. That should be like brushing teeth every day. And when I tell people that are learning a new language, people always tell me, but why is it needed? Like you have those AI interpreters that can just interpret. What is the point? But the process is the point. It's not, it's like asking, why eat, if you can just get an injection with all of the, why read, why love, why breathe, what is the point of life? Well, the process is the point, right? And it's exactly as Tom says, and I think it's so important to keep that in mind. So the next speaker today is going to be Professor Jose Licon, who teaches Spanish at our department, and he also has prepared remarks.
Well, after hearing Tom, I apologize for the bunch of truisms I'm going to tell you. This is just something that I was reflecting on when Soren asked me to participate. So let's see how it goes. When I hear the title, The Importance of Teaching and Learning Foreign Languages, I immediately think in a couple of things. First of all, for whom it is important, right? And then I break it in two pieces. The importance of teaching, the importance of learning. If it cannot be kind of the same thing sometimes. I would like to start telling you that teaching a foreign language is very important to me because I have 2 kids to feed, and it's the source of my income. No, but seriously. It is important because it provides purpose to my professional self. Seeing progress in my student is very rewarding. I have been teaching language since 2006 in different colleges. Most of these classes have been at the elementary level. And for me, there are few more gratifying things that witnessing the change that students in 101 make in a few months of exposure to the language. From being unable to understand anything to be able to maintain a brief conversation, basic Spanish, present tense, is very gratifying. It makes me feel that I was useful, that I was making my contribution to their education, to society. Obviously, this happens in all levels. Okay? Obviously, this progress happens in all levels of language teaching. But in my opinion, in 101 is when you really see the change. At the institutional level, teaching foreign languages is also very important. As we know, one of the objectives of college education, at least in an institution like ours, is to form well-rounded, useful for society individuals who, or using the words in the mission of SIUE, to form professionals, scholars, and leaders who shape the changing world. To achieve this, we ought to train our students in the use of critical thinking, communicating effectively, and solving complex problems. Well, learning a foreign language is good for all these things. A simple Google search will lead you to a wide range of studies that have shown how acquiring a second language reshapes the brain, enhance your problem-solving skills, your communication skills, as well as improve your academic performance and widen your job opportunities. And then I had to put this because my training is in medieval literature, so it's like, oh, I have to say it. It's not coincidental that it has been like this since the very beginning of the university's existence in the 12th century, and keeping our distances, right? Back then, honing language skills, the trivium, the grammar, the rhetoric, was of the utmost importance, an essential part of the liberal arts education. By the way, the skills that developed the students back then, I think, are pretty similar to what we're trying to achieve. They were being trained to be the leaders, right? The teachers, the advisors, etc. At least at this core. And it's also interesting that to do this, they were training in a foreign language, Latin, right? Anyway, let's leave that behind. Furthermore, in a connected world like ours, the ability to communicate with other people is not a matter of choice. From business people to tourists, from migrant workers to politicians, from scholars to people of faith, the need to communicate is not a choice. It's a reality. It can be argued that with the help of technology and the use of devices, it's now possible to achieve this communication. But as we know, truly communicating is not only conveying the information in a message. Human languages have several functions that are important to the act of communication. And at least as now, machines are not capable to do that. Additionally, languages are loaded with the culture of those who use them. Hence, the attempt to expand the students' understanding of other cultures is not futile. It serves them to become globalized citizens, as they are expected to be. This is also beneficial to stimulate their empathy, that in times like the current ones is much needed. But enough of this. Let's go to the why it's important to learn foreign languages, right? As a person, individual, learning a foreign language is important because it changes lives. The reasons for learning second language are broad and wide. But besides all the physiological, academic, professional, and social benefits of it, that should be incentive enough, right? Learning a foreign language is always enriching. Let me tell you the story of a friend of mine, Professor Joseph Scriman. He would be scolding me, Pepe, so let's talk about Pepe. He came to this country in the early 40s when he was 6 years old, not knowing a single word of English. He was born in Cuba, from a Jewish family. He was enrolled in Brooklyn in a school where all the subjects were taught in English. For him, learning the language was not a matter of choice but survival. Not only academically, but socially. It took him a bit, but he ended up well. He overcame the barrier of language and became a well-known professor. From enduring the economic hardships of his childhood, he pushed himself and was able to improve his conditions thanks to the learning of that second language. His story is not unique. The world is full of these kinds of stories. Migrants who succeed in their new countries. I myself might be one of these stories. But migrating is but migrating, either by necessity or by choice, is not the only reason to learn a foreign language. Whether you want to trade, to escape, to preach the gospel, to study, to travel the world, learning a second language and being able to understand and communicate with other peoples is always transformative. It's a plus, not a minus. Again, full of truisms, but it's what I got.
Thank you, Jose. This is really beautiful. It's really great that we have these wonderful contributions. And Jose is absolutely right. Our job is so rewarding because students come with often just zero knowledge, and then at the end of their Spanish or French or German major, you see them deliver their senior assignment presentation fluently. And it's like they have, since then, they have traveled, they have seen the world, they have encountered people from different cultures. It's such an enriching experience. Just observing them in that process, it's one of the best things about this job for certain. So we also have with us today Yaroslava Pańko. She's our Fulbright scholar from Ukraine who joined us for this academic year to teach Ukrainian at SIUE and also to learn another language because that's how Ukrainians roll. Also, like not only to teach but to learn other languages. So I hope she can talk to us a little bit about her experience. And after that, we're going to have some time for questions and for discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Bozhanova. Well, yes, like Dr. Bozhanova, I'm from Ukraine too, from a different generation where the Soviet Union has just collapsed and the country was just so eager to join the community of the world, to learn more about the world, to go beyond that Iron Curtain. And that's why the learning of foreign languages in Ukraine, in independent Ukraine, has always been a value. And from my generation onward, English as the primary foreign language of the world has been taught since nursery school. So when I come here and people ask me, how do you know English so well? Like, how long did it take you to study it? I was like, I'm answering that basically I've studied English all my life. So yeah, like English is just running through every level of educational instruction in modern Ukraine. And I remember being a kid so fascinated with this language, with this world somewhere beyond this poverty-ridden post-Soviet Ukraine, watching American movies, watching American TV series, you know, like singing to Britney Spears songs with like having no clue what I'm saying, but you know, it was very inspiring. And I fell in love with languages and cultures, and language has been something that inspired my curiosity about the world we live in, and that had stayed with me my whole life. Before coming here, I worked as a translator for 10 years, so basically my whole career is connected to languages. During my studies and work, I had the privilege to learn to study other European languages like German, Swedish. Now I'm learning Spanish here at SIUE, and it's just fascinating. It drives me so much to be able to delve into this other community, into this other society with their unique perspective on the world. Just broadening your horizons this way. Plus, I think language is one of those things that promotes analytical thinking so much, because I love seeing on the example of language how this other society conceptualizes the world. Just, by literally translating things, it's like, oh, this is how they think about this phenomenon, whereas we do this. I like breaking the words apart into morphemes, into forms, and see how they change. Also, my career as a translator has been extremely rewarding to me, because it gave me the privilege to be useful, I helped to bring connections, to build bridges amongst people that don't understand each other. I was part of the great initiatives, different workshops, like medical workshops and demining initiatives for Ukraine, different humanitarian projects. I've translated books as well, and it's just so rewarding to see that this small piece of your work has touched so many lives in different regard. Now here I am as part of the program that is called Fulbright Foreign Language Teaching Assistant Program. It is sponsored by Fulbright Association, which exists for decades and is sponsored by American government. They have different programs for studying, for scholars, and my program, Foreign Language Teaching Assistant, is a unique opportunity for people to come and teach their native language. So the US government sponsors people like me from different parts of the world to come here and teach my native language to you guys. And also, as far as I know, this same program exists for American students to go abroad and teach English. We used to have such a Fulbrighter at my university. It was awesome, and people normally love language lessons from native speakers, because there's just some other person who's so not like you, and it's a genuine, authentic language, not a textbook drill. So I can tell you that English teachers across the world are in very high demand, and we as Ukrainians who studied English were so excited for native speakers lessons, to have this American in your classroom to teach English to you. The same way Americans and other English speakers from around the world go and teach English in different countries. I know they are very popular in Southeast Asia, in Korea, in China, in Japan, in Ukraine, obviously, Russia, whatever. So, well, maybe not today, yeah. But it used to be this way, at least. So, I think language just gives you these incredible opportunities for personal enrichment, for career paths, for seeing the world. If it weren't for me learning all these languages and putting that much effort, I wouldn't have been here today. I wouldn't have been able to participate in this amazing program and live with you guys for 9 months and see this American society and American life from inside. And you guys have this opportunity too, to go to these other countries that may be fascinate you in some way, and become a part of their culture and become an instrument of enrichment to those people. Become to do something of value in your life. And yeah, here I also have an opportunity to study 2 subjects per semester as requirements of my program, which are completely up to me. And being a person fascinated in languages, I picked a language, a Spanish language, and I was I had an opportunity to learn from my colleagues, Jose here and Joaquin, another of our professors at the foreign language department, and it's been very fun and very rewarding. Spanish is another one of those major languages in the world, and I just like comparing Spanish to Ukrainian, and has a lot of similarities in some ways, Spanish to English. It's so much fun. Also, I think in terms of personal enrichment and personal education, in my opinion, Americans could benefit greatly from learning about other cultures, not just from textbooks, not just from media or Fox News, God forbid, or like whatever. From people who speak these languages. And for my countries, it is extremely important right now, because for so long, Eastern European studies or Slavic studies has been just Russian studies. This country that used to be like an empire ruling over us just overshadowed all the discourse about Ukraine. Mostly all the things that people knew about Ukraine before long was that it's just a part of Russia, in their opinion. And if I had $1 for every time an American tried to speak Russian to me just based on the assumption that I'm from Ukraine, I would return back home a very rich woman. So I'm just glad that this opportunity gives me this very valuable chance to speak on behalf of my country, speak on behalf of my nations, and tell you what we really are, instead of what Russian media or American media tells you. And I've been extremely grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Thank you to all of the speakers. I was wondering if anybody has any questions or anything to share. Yes, please.
Okay, I will try to be brief, but thank you so much for your insight. I enjoyed all 4 of your presentations. Here are my questions. For Thomas, I was curious to know, well, one, I do want to have a printout of what you said. I think I would love to share that with my husband. He's very passionate about words. So that was really great. But I wanted to know what type of students are learning Chinese. I asked that question in terms of, your introduction was very interesting about the 2,200 hours. I'm wondering, I myself know 2 other languages, and people would always say to me, oh, you must be good at languages. And I'm like, no, I just love the culture. So I'm curious to know, your Chinese students, like, do they lean one way, or are they all over the board? Like, are they more like STEM, sort of like analytical thinkers, or maybe that is a silly question.
Not at all. No, it's a great question. So I've been teaching Chinese language since, I guess maybe 1997. It's the first time I started to teach it. And I taught as a teaching assistant, excellent, really motivated students. And I started teaching here in 2001. So I can talk about the kind of the broad range of experience for the kinds of students. If I were to characterize them, I would say that they were risk takers. There were people who really were hungry for complexity. I wouldn't say they're necessarily in any one domain of knowledge or discipline. They come from all different fields. But I guess one of the profiles also is that they have like a craving for processing detailed information. The ones that are successful, let's put it that way. And they're hungry for that. And Chinese as a language will not disappoint if you have that profile and part of your cognitive experiences the world. A lot of artists that can kind of see the value of completely getting outside their frame of reference, to come at the world from a very different perspective, but then also have a visual component to their learning. That's a short answer for that.
Okay, and then my other two questions could be for either Jose or Yaroslava. There have been two quotes that I've heard in recent history. I work at the International Institute of St. Louis working with refugees and immigrants. And one of the quotes that a SIUE professor once told me was that there will be ELL students in every classroom by the year of 2020 or 2025. So we're past that year now. Haven't done the research to look it up, but I had assumed that they might be Spanish speakers. So I was wondering if you knew that, and then also the empathy piece of Americans. Like the other statistic that I haven't looked up is that Missouri, and I don't know about Illinois, but Missouri has the least amount of passport applications in the country. So we're really an insular state, right, in terms of traveling the world. So your comment about, and I believe that language helps us get jobs, but like we're in the Midwest. There's a lot of people who, like you mentioned, inappropriately ask you if you know Russian. Like many Midwesterners, like I don't know that they consider that a skill. Or maybe they do and I'm just looking in the wrong places. I mean, I obviously work where people value language, but I'm curious outside the world, outside of my work, outside of academia, like who else is valuing language? I mean, I guess business people for the business transactions, but one, if you know any statistics on our English, our classrooms, I believe that the state of Missouri made it mandatory for education learners that they had to take 2 ELL classes, English language learners, so they had to be prepared for those students in the classroom. I'm just wondering if you've heard anything about this, or does that exist? And then the second question is, give me more evidence that learning, I mean, I believe the language is important and should be learned, but do Midwesterners really value a multilingual person? And do they have empathy for multilingual people? I've only been in the field 23 years, but I'd like to learn more.
Well, about the statistics, I don't know. My son is in elementary school, and just because they knew that he was a son of a Mexican, they sent him to those classes, and then, oh no, the mom only speaks English. I mean, but yeah, in that school, that exists. The classes for kids that are learning English. About the curiosity, maybe I have been lucky, but even at the Schnucks, once I was wearing this shirt that says SIUE, and, oh, you were there? Yeah, what do you do? I teach English. I teach Spanish, I'm sorry. Oh, I would love to learn Spanish. And then they try to, I know a few words. That has happened in Schnucks, that has happened with the, my kids like donuts, so every Sunday we go for donuts. The person there is like, oh yeah, and he tries to engage. So I think the curiosity is there. I don't know if the opportunities are there, but I have seen the curiosity.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I do agree that the mindset here in the US is different from the European ones. Obviously, European countries are much smaller and they are very connected. So it is very common for most Europeans to know at least several languages and speak several languages on a daily basis. And I do agree that sometimes I don't see that same curiosity, the level of curiosity here. Because yes, like to think of it, you know, English is indeed the most common foreign language. Chances are whenever you travel to any touristic country, at least, you'll be understood or you will be provided services in English, even if it's a broken English, but still you might not like your business or career might not depend on foreign languages as much as like for people from other parts of the world. But also we need to be aware that the world is changing rapidly, right? So, and there are more speakers in the world that don't speak English rather than the English speakers, right? And there are new emerging superpowers in the world that makes knowing those languages at least useful. Second is, I'm not saying that a foreign language will definitely like boost your career or will help you learn more if you want to study in the remain in the US. But what I'm saying is that it's incredibly interesting and rewarding experience if that's what you're already considering, if that's what you already kind of like and leaning towards. So what I'm thinking is that we should, like as educators, we should target those people who are already curious in learning a foreign language. And like I said, it's an incredibly rewarding experience or career. Like if you like working with people, if you like helping people, working with a language as a translator, for example, or an educator is extremely beneficial in that regard. It makes you feel like you're doing something great in this life. And yes, like I do see at SIUE a little bit of that mindset that, you know, people are kind of required to take a foreign language. So there is always the portion of people who will just take up a foreign language just because they have to. And for minor language like Ukrainian, you know, like we don't have a big crowd statistically year from year, but what we do have are incredibly motivated students, those who come with that spark of curiosity, you know, who want to learn. But I do also see an increasing amount of fatigue in the American society of being in America, you know? People try to escape the country or try to escape their, you know, small town or whatever. They want to, not necessarily to say that the US is a bad country to live or something, but I'm just saying that people want to see what's more out there, what's behind the US, like beyond the US. And I think that the foreign languages is one of those amazing opportunities that helps you get out of there. You know, it helps you to get to study in another country, to work in another country for a few years. And honestly, as an English teacher, in many countries of the world, you will be extremely venerated for teaching English. It is a case for a lot of countries, especially like I think Southeast Asia and Arabic world, where the teacher is already culturally regarded very highly, right? So if you go to those places and you get to teach English and you get to learn about their culture and you get to learn their language maybe, it will open a lot of pathways for you. And connections too. I think that a big part of any career is networking. And it's amazing to me sometimes that how many doors have been opened to me with knowing foreign languages, with associating with people from the other side of the world. And like, here I come to SIUE and I meet Dr. Bazhanova, and we already know some people together in common because we've encountered them through our career experiences. So yes, like I do get what you're saying, like, and I understand that, but I also think that we just need to fight harder for the people who already want to learn.
Thank you so much. Okay, Gordon has a question.
I introduced myself. I was a teacher of English in Romania, starting in 1995. I've been involved many times in translating books or articles or providing translation for, juridical services here in the United States for Romanians and the other way around. So there was a concept that we were told in the process of translation when we were taught English by our professors. And at that time, 1990 to 1995, we had some American professors at our universities. And this Italian concept of traduttore traditore, the translator might be its own traitor, because you can put your mind from your cultural background into a translation that might not work because you don't have the cultural idiosyncrasies. Have you all encountered such a situation when you had to translate from that foreign language that you're a specialist in?
Can I also answer, because I teach translation and interpretation at the SIUE. And so when I teach translation, this is the biggest challenge for the students. It's not vocabulary or grammar, none of that. It's finding the sense of the inner authority to mess with the original text. Because to translate well, you have to mangle the original text. Sometimes you have to break up one sentence into 2 or 3. You have to change the word order. You have to add. You have to subtract. And so I keep talking to students and tell them, I understand that you're young. I understand that it's very hard. But this feeling when you give yourself the inner permission to get into the text and make it your own, and make something out of it, and become a co-author of the text. And I see that the students struggle, but that moment when finally they get this courage, this feeling of taking off in flight, it's like finally this text is mine and I'm doing something with it. Most of my students are not going to go on to become professional translators or interpreters, although some do. But I believe that experience of finding the inner strength, the inner authority in yourself, that is very valuable. Yeah. Do you have any stories?
Well, yeah, as a translator, I'm familiar with this concept, of course, and that's what we've studied in university too. I don't necessarily agree with that, I get where they're coming from, that it's just impossible to translate everything, preserving both the meaning and the form of what was said into another language, simply because the concepts of the worldview don't synchronize. However, it doesn't mean that we can't translate and we get our point across. I've seen, through my 10-year translator career, I've seen this shift from that type of mindset into the mindset that the main point is to get our point across, get our message across. And you can, actually it's a pretty interesting job to just view how ideas are shaped in one language, and you kind of pick it apart as a jigsaw puzzle and you put it back together in another language, trying to get the same picture. And I can relate to what Dr. Bazhanova is saying, that especially in the post-Soviet Ukrainian school, higher education, there was this heavy influence that you never mess with the original, you have to say everything word for word. But if you ever try to literally explain anything from one language into another, you will learn that it's extremely difficult, and if not impossible, it just lands flat. It doesn't get your message across, and it doesn't get your tone across. If anything, if you guys know any other languages, try to retell a joke from one language into another literally, and you will see where it gets you. It gets you nowhere. So yeah, definitely you need to transform the idea, the form of what was said, preserving the meaning. And I can say that an interpreter's career had been my dream for many years. Like, I'm still not there, but I'm like moving in that direction, and I can see that can be an example of one of those really cool, high-paying, and extremely interesting and impactful jobs. Just look at those, conference translators or like high-meeting interpreters, right? Can you imagine the amount of classified information that goes through you every day? It's just like it's great. It's some of those things that I aspire to. So yeah, like there are definitely really cool paths in this careers that are connected to languages. What do you guys think?
Oh, thank you so much. Do you have any, oh, you had more? Sorry.
That question was for everybody.
Yeah,
Oh,
the question
I'm
is
sorry.
for everybody.
I don't want to wrestle stories out of people if right now this is not what they're inspired to talk about.
I don't have experience translating, but Spanish is very near, right? And I have seen things that are horribly translated in posters, and yeah, and it's funny.
And I really like bringing that activity to my students wherever I go, and I see posters in Spanish that are badly translated. I take pictures and then I bring them to class and I ask students to identify mistakes, and we have little competitions who identifies mistakes faster and how they can do it better. And hopefully then they're going to go out into the world and bring a better version of Spanish. That's my hope. That's more.
Also, I think it's a very valuable learning tool, like for me personally, learning foreign languages, common mistakes have been one of the best things to like get something to memorize, because like when you understand how ridiculous it sounds in this specific language, it just sticks in your mind for you to not repeat it. And to the point of like machine translation and AI translation, of course it's improving with a great pace, but however it's still not able to reach that level of efficiency. So for example, in Ukraine it has a huge impact because of all of the Russian propaganda and like information operations in the Ukrainian society through social media, because you can debunk it really fast because they were translated with machine or AI translation. And to think that, Ukrainian and Russian are very close languages. It's both Eastern Slavic languages, and still the machine is not able to translate the point correctly. So you get these really silly, stupid mistakes that just make it very evident that this was an information campaign rather than a legit post, and that kind of travel and become memes where people just, put it on t-shirts and make fun of it. I think it's kind of amazing.
I have a quote that I wanted to read about translation. And I teach a class on translation of literature, both in the Japanese to English and Chinese to English. So I have them read a collection of quotations related to the art or the folly of translation. Translators are like ninjas. The only time you notice them is when they're not good.
It's so true. Yeah.
And then there's another Borges quote that I like. It goes, maybe you know this one, the original is unfaithful to the translation. But I think it has to be, you have to be of service to the people that you're translating for. And that's where, this whole idea of artificial intelligence, or even efficiency for that matter, if your heart and your presence is not fully invested